Hello, everyone. It's all within us. This is what my guest today, Michael Padurano, has to share. And he is here on Awaken and Ascend. I am Jennifer Regular, your host, and I am so grateful for all of you that are tuning in right now. I get excited every time I get to meet a mentor that really just talks, that shares, and is just real and transparent. And Michael is no exception. And he is on a mission to show people that following others isn't the answer. It's really more about learning as many ways as possible, then figuring out what works for each individual. Healing the world one person at a time and supporting their direct connection is what Michael feels called to as a multifaceted, multidimensional spiritual being living this human experience that brings depth to expand ceilings. Michael, it is so wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I am honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Yeah, it is an honor to be here. Actually, it may not always feel that way with the way the world is going right now, or maybe it's always been going, or just so much more aware of it, because we're so interconnected online. And I'm curious how you find that peace and the stability through it all, being multifaceted, being multidimensional. How do you stay stable through it all?
That's definitely a multi-layered conversation. Or a question. For me, it's about honoring my direct connection to my higher power, my understanding, and knowing that I'm always directly connected and finding my inner peace, and nothing outside of me impacts my inner peace unless I allow it to. It's about understanding the fact that when we directly connect to our higher power, no matter what we describe it as, we are protected by that connection. And that connection is sacred, it's holy, it's however you want to describe it, but it's ours and personally our own. There is no one else in it, there's no one else there. We are all individuals. There's 8.1 billion individuals on this planet on our own individual journeys. And to me, the spiritual journey is the depth of self understanding. That's how I describe the spiritual journey. It's how far within are you willing to go? The
Mm.
deeper you go within, the more connected you become. And I've been blessed and fortunate enough to still wake up every day and be able to increase that depth on a daily basis and really move into a space of compassionate self-awareness and unconditional self-love.
Mm.
And through that and my direct connection that I honor multiple times a day, I'm able to live at peace no matter what the chaos is around me. I mean, I have moments. Everybody has moments. I'm a solo parent of 3 kids. So there are moments, right? Like we all get crazy. We all get a little bit up and down, but it's not, that's part of the experience.
Mm.
Like we can't bypass any of the emotional spectrum. We have to be able to sit within it and be able to feel through it, embrace it completely, and just be at peace as a resting vibrational frequency. And for me, I found that through my different experiences and through the wisdom that's been imparted upon me that I then applied and turned it into my own wisdom and my own perspective. Because there is no right or wrong. Every perspective is accurate, every perspective is true, all 8.1 billion of them. So it's a matter of just honoring ourselves and our direct connection. It always goes back to me to the direct connection. Everything goes back to it.
Yeah, yeah, I can totally resonate with that because when I created this like little way of trying to remember how to cope and be able to share that with people, it was, using it as an acronym because I love acronyms. And cope, when we're really in it, when we're in the thrux of everything and we're in those trenches, then that C is about conscious connection. And it's always the first step for me, always that conscious connection. Because anytime I feel like I'm out of alignment, it's because I don't have that conscious connection,
Mhm.
right? And so it doesn't feel right. It feels off. It feels out of alignment. And that being, it's only temporary. Recognize the impermanence, not getting caught up in it, stuck in it, and thinking, oh no, life is over. This is the way it's going to be forever, because it's not. It's just recognizing that it is only temporary, So being open with the curiosity to share in those experiences, to be able to recognize that and to practice patience is the P, right? To be able to practice that patience, just hang in there, but it helps us cultivate trust too. And patience is like peace in action, like you've been talking about. And that E is the energy management, because for those of us who's an empath or highly sensitive, or even if we're not, because there's so much stimulation out there, there's so much noise going on, it can really have an impact on our energy, and make us feel that we're emotionally fatigued, mentally fatigued, emotionally drained, So energy management becomes really important as well. And then as we go a little further and do that inner ascension work that you're talking about, then cope becomes even more elevated, but we still need to cope because we're human, right? So then it's more
100%.
about community. It's more about being more open to the possibilities, pondering the possibilities, and elevating our excellence. But I'm curious, Michael, have you always felt this way? Have you always
No,
been at
no,
peace? No.
no, not even
So
close.
what was life
No.
before the peace set in?
Um, Absolute chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, I created it. I had it. I wanted the chaos. It's all I knew how to function in. So it was all about chaos. I felt the most comfortable in the most chaotic of circumstances because it was all I knew. I was abused as a child, physically and emotionally for years, from 2 to 14. I started drinking at 9. I started doing hardcore drugs at 12. Um, did a lot of numbing and a lot of escaping and a lot of hiding. I got sober at 27 and I found other ways to numb and hide and cope, whether it was being addicted to strip clubs or sex or businesses, opening business after business after business, or whether it was helping people and avoiding myself, because we do that as a bypass also, right? We people please. So we move into that space to try and just make everybody feel better, and then indirectly feel better. So I went through it all. Like I've been the gambling, the drugs, the sex, the businesses, money, chasing it all, chasing everything, chasing external accolades. um, I didn't start understanding the potential for peace until I got sober. And because I didn't do the emotional work yet and I didn't heal my childhood trauma, I couldn't hold on to it. I couldn't, it was like being right in front of me and I just couldn't put it in my grasp. It was like there and I kept like missing. Like it was like chasing it, that elusive feeling, because I didn't have the emotional capacity to feel and sit in it and understand it and appreciate it. All extremes of the emotional bandwidth. I look at emotions as not a band aid, a rubber band. And I feel like, we minimize their emotions till we get into this size of a rubber band. So when we pretend to be happy, we're only up to this extreme. We think it's happy. We think it's joy. We think this is peace. We think all these things. But until we're willing to sit through the lower vibrations, the pain, the shame, the guilt, the blame, which then expands the band aid or the rubber band. I'm sorry. I keep saying band aid, not sure why. But as we expand the rubber band, it expands our it expands our emotional bandwidth, which means the extremes that I am willing to sit through on the low side, the extremes I'm willing to allow and feel on the upside. So I feel like there's always a level deeper on both sides, which is why I say I expand depth and break ceilings, because it's constantly expanding that bandwidth and being able to grow through it all. So in 2018, I couldn't handle my life anymore and I was contemplating suicide, and a friend of mine offered to buy me a ticket to go back to Florida after lots of crazy crap in between, which could be a whole episode on its own. But like I hit a point where I couldn't live with it anymore. It was triggering the abuse I went through as a kid. It was just a really ugly situation. So I worked out a verbal civil divorce with my ex-wife now and went back to Florida to rebuild my life. And as soon as I got on the plane, she already was introducing my kids to a new guy that she met online. And within 3 weeks, she moved 5 hours away from where we were staying. And I had no access to my children, even no knowledge of where they were for the first 5 months until I hacked her credit card and found them. Now, during this period of time, I went back to Florida and I started working on myself and obviously losing access to my kids and all these other crazy circumstances. I speak with my hands a lot, so they're going to be flying everywhere. It's like wind signals. It's like, I'm waiting to land the plane here. But as I'm trying to do healing and trying to figure out who I am, what I am, what I'm trying to live into, I'm also now losing access to my children, which because of the abuse in childhood, I was led with my feminine energy. So I
Mm,
was always that more nurturing parent, that more mothering type parent to my kids,
mm,
which was just heart wrenching and gut wrenching. But until I was able to grow through that experience of being in Florida and start really working on myself and understanding myself and stepping into myself, really building a real relationship with my father. My mother was the one who abused me. So building a relationship with my father was pivotal. My mother passed away in 2011 or 12, so way before this circumstance. And then finally, December of 2019, he sat me down and he said, "I'm sorry for everything that you went through. I'm sorry for all the abuse you went through." He said, "How bad was it?" And I told him, and he said, "I am so sorry. I am so sorry that we never told the family, that we told them that you were a liar and manipulator and that it was all lies. I'm sorry that we made you the black sheep of everyone." And I said, "Honestly, I'm 40 years old. I don't care now. Like, I just don't care. It's not none of my business what others think of me." And, this is when I started finally, I felt validated by the one person that I never felt validated by because it was, he was the one that was supposed to protect me from this circumstance.
mm.
But his way of showing love was financial security. So he was always working, making money, trying to provide for the family. And that was how he showed his love.
Mhm.
He had no emotional capacity to express it. So that conversation itself was this groundbreaking landmark conversation that I never expected. And it started to real change within me on an emotional level. That validation from the one person that should have protected me in my childhood gave me that fuel to really fight for myself in a completely different way than I ever experienced. Now, the unfortunate part is within 3 months, I got evidence of physical abuse against my kids, which I knew was happening, but I couldn't do anything because I'm claircognizant, I'm clairvoyant, I'm clairsentient, and clairaudient.
Got it all.
So all the gifts, yeah, all the gifts were coming out and all the gifts were there, and I knew what was going on, but I couldn't do anything.
Mhm.
So I was while healing myself, while 1,300 miles away, while trying to rebuild myself and get myself in a position. My kids are off getting just harmed and annihilated and abused and everything else that was going on with them and removed from my life because the kids were getting brainwashed and told that they were going to have their last name changed and that I wanted nothing to do with them and that I didn't love them and all these different things.
Wow.
So February of 2020, I get this evidence, and that weekend I jumped in the car. I had $3.76 to my name, and I drove to Arkansas. And I said, "I'm going to fight for my kids." And I packed for 8 days. I said, "This is going to be easy, right? It's the end of February 2020. This is going to be easy. I have physical proof. I only need to pack for 8 days." And I was able to magically start getting money coming my way from people that owed me money, businesses that I had, other stuff that was going on. And it got me to the point where I got to Arkansas. And my father said, "I'm going to get you a lawyer. I'm going to land tomorrow, pick me up in Memphis, and we will go get a lawyer the next day." And that's what we did. So he got there. We secured a lawyer. It was February 25th of now 2020. So we know how 2020 turns out.
Yes.
Didn't have this plan. Again, I was packed for 8 days. So, we go to the lawyer, we sign the contract, and he's like, "You're going to get emergency custody immediately." We're like, "Cool. Okay, good." So, we're still looking okay for that 8 day window that I had closed and I was borrowing money and I was trying to make this work. The lawyer didn't file paperwork for 11 days. My kids were in that dreadful situation for another 11 days because he didn't see the urgency to file the paperwork. And the day that he filed, I got emergency custody immediately, but he just didn't see the urgency in filing it. So I get emergency custody of my kids March 6th of 2020.
Mm.
So we're getting closer to D-Day, right? We're getting closer to COVID Day. And I get my kids, and I'm already way past 8 days in. I'm already in dirty clothes. I'm already trying to wash clothes in a hotel, and I'm going to a different hotel in the town where my kids were, which again, the boyfriend was threatening my life every day and saying that he was going to kill me because he was moving drugs for the cartel through a biker club that he was a part of, all sorts of fun drama crap, right?
Mm.
And so I'm sitting there, I'm fighting for my kids, and the process starts. I ended up being there for 19 months, stranded in Arkansas for 19 months, starting out with $3.76. And I got my kids March 6th, thank God. And COVID started March 13th, 17th. The world shut down, and I was trapped. I was trapped in Arkansas. I couldn't leave the district because of the court case. I had emergency custody, so I couldn't take them anywhere else. So I just had to stay in Arkansas the whole time, and I knew nobody. I did a GoFundMe, and I was trying to raise funds and trying to do business and trying to do all these different things. Business was nearly impossible because we were staying in a motel room for the first 30 days. And it was me and three kids that I just took out of an abusive house.
Yeah.
My son, who got the worst of it, he was physically and emotionally abused every single day. He used to actually poop his pants anytime he heard a motorcycle backfire because the boyfriend was in a biker gang and a biker club or whatever you want to call it, right? Whatever the label is, doesn't matter. So every time he heard a motorcycle, he would literally poop his pants.
And you had no resources. Everything was closed. Everything shut down. And you're in a
So
place you don't actually
yeah,
live. No external resources whatsoever. So
yeah.
that's when
I
you
mean,
to go in, right? That's when you
well,
tap into
it,
that
it
inner resourcefulness, or what
I
was it that got you
I
through
still
it?
was resisting quite a bit, and,
Mm-hmm.
and so I ended up finding an Airbnb, and I found it by the month. It was about an hour away, a
Okay.
little bit further isolated than even that was isolated, which was kind of strange to me because I already thought I was isolated. What did I know? I came from South Florida where I could walk 10 minutes and be at a Dunkin' Donuts or a Starbucks any direction. I went there. I was an hour and a half from a Starbucks, hour and a half from a Dunkin' Donuts. No delivery food, no delivery services at all. Amazon Prime took 11 days. Like it was like literally being in like at the time I called it my personal hell
Mm-hmm.
because it was this little remote town, about 6,000 people. I think six, maybe 4,000. If I don't remember exactly, but there was three rivers that wrapped around, and there was a big dam. So ironically, where I was staying, it was in a wooded area where the three rivers wrapped around. So I was actually surrounded by rivers, which, if you're in the spiritual world, that's holy ground where you're wrapped surrounded by water. And I called it my personal hell. Looking back, it was truly my healing oasis
Mm-hmm.
because that is when I started looking really within.
Mm-hmm.
It was about 2 to 3 months in. I was really stubborn. I was like, nothing is going my way. Every court date was 4 months apart. They just kept getting pushed back 4 months at a time
Yeah.
because the judge was only in the courthouse that I was assigned to 3 times a month.
Oh.
So he covered 5 districts, so or districts. So he was in mine three times a month. I got very fortunate because the judge did not back down to the cartel, and the cartel tried smear campaigns, and he cared about the kids more than he cared about male, female, more than he cared about anything else. So when it came down to it, as horrible as my lawyer was, and he was horrendous because he didn't even submit the evidence to the judge, because it's a very much of a boys' club, that mentality of I'm going to hand it to you while I'm in court. This judge doesn't play that game. This judge was, you didn't submit it 24 hours earlier. I can't look at it, so take it away from me.
Mm-hmm.
So the judge never even saw the evidence, but because her lawyers kept firing her every time they would see the evidence, the judge never needed to. He just kept giving continuances because she had no lawyer. And it was 2 days before that final court date, she reached out to me and said, "Whatever you want, let's settle. I'm scared I'm going to go to jail and never see my kids again." And I got the arrangement that I wanted, which was I could live anywhere in the world scot free. She paid no child support, which is all she cared about. She cared about the money. And she would get 1 week a year to have supervised time with them. And that was it. So we moved up to Pennsylvania. But during that time period of that 19 months of being out there, I worked with about 30 different coaches, 6 or 7 different shamans, a priest, a rabbi, a few others, and I was trained by 2 of the shamans, ordained by 2 of them. As at the same time, I was doing all sorts of stuff with psychotherapists and all these other different things to really break into my trauma and heal it. There was months, literally months. I'm not even exaggerating at this point. Months of crying, months of journaling, months of being absolutely miserable, and allowing my 3 children to observe this whole process was the greatest gift I could ever imagine to them because they started understanding that there was another option for them. I'm very transparent with my children. I tell them everything. I hide nothing from them. So they know my whole story. My one of my son's favorite lines today is, "Dad, at least I'm facing my trauma and I'm not getting high or drunk like you did."
Yeah.
And not to throw it in my face, but he's like, "I'm proud of myself that I'm willing to go through this." And I said, "Thomas, I'm beyond proud of you. You're 11 years old. There's 50-year-olds that won't do it. So you're facing it every day and you're getting up and you're doing what you need to do every day. I am so proud of you. It's unbelievable." He even cooked Thanksgiving dinner this year. He
Yay.
cooked a turkey. He cooked a turkey. He made homemade mashed potatoes. He made stuffing. He made broccoli. He made cupcakes. He did it all.
Wow.
So I mean, it's these. This is a magic, right?
Yeah.
Like my 6-year-old, if I'm in a bad mood, she'll come up and say to me, "Dad, you got to go journal. You got to go meditate. You got to go write a self-forgiveness letter."
He knows
And
what works.
I just look at her and I'm like, "You're 6 years old. You don't acknowledge your trauma yet. You have it, and it comes out in different ways, and you know that these are options for me to feel better."
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the miracle starts sinking in. Like the hell that I went through for that 19 months, what they witnessed, that transformation with me, now has shown them what is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's given them healthier alternatives. So not only did I break the generational crap,
Yeah,
I also opened them up to enormous possibilities in the future. My
definitely.
son will look at me and he says, Dad, all I want to do in the future is help people.
Hmm.
And I looked at him and I said, "You help me every day, so you're already winning." And he
That's
just looked at
right.
me and he goes, "I don't know what you mean." I'm like,
Uncle
"You'll get it one
Google.
day. You'll get it one day. I mean,
Yeah.
right now you might not." And
Yeah.
it's, but that's my why, right?
Yeah.
That is my why. Plus, my definitive purpose is to elevate humanity through knowledge and understanding. So, what I did to that was I turned it into knowledge and understanding of self.
Mm.
And my whole work now is working with people to help them to go deeper within self.
Mm. Like Aristotle, know
Yes,
thyself. Mm.
yes. And it's, that's my practice. That's what I do. I have created workbooks. I have a book getting released on December 12th with
Yay.
the whole process, a little bit of my backstory, just enough so that people understand it. And the beautiful thing is the paperbacks are 6 by 9, so you can actually write in them. And there's blank templates in there of the exercises that I've created that have helped me get where I am and that have helped others that have done it.
What
I
kind of
mean, I
title did you
really,
put on it?
the path to the growing forward experience.
Mm. The growing forward experience.
Yeah, because that's what I call the work, is the growing forward experience, because I feel like we're in a permanent state of evolution and learning and healing.
Mm-hmm.
So I just call it the growing forward, and doing this work is the growing forward experience. So
I love
it's
that. I love that. I saw in a picture once that said, "Don't look back. You're not going that way." So I love that growing forward experience. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I find it interesting. The future doesn't exist yet. The past isn't real because it's already gone. The past is what we reflect on objectively without blaming, shaming, guilty, and judging ourselves, which is the healing part, right? Because that's what we erase with the healing, is
Mm-hmm.
the blame, shames, guilt, and judging and
Absolutely.
judgment and all these things.
Yeah.
And we learn from it objectively from a place of just understanding our patterns and behaviors. So I start, ironically, with the first workbook, is the direct connection to your higher power of your understanding. Whatever your higher power is, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It will work for anyone. And there's mantras in there, there's understanding yourself, there's questions, interactive. So you start understanding, if I remember correctly at the top of my head, which I probably don't, but I'm going to try anyway. Like, what are attributes, positive attributes of your higher power? What are attributes that you have that align with your higher power? What are attributes that you have that go against your higher power? What is your understanding of your higher power, right? So that you can start understanding that you're more similar to your higher power than you are different. And
Mm.
when you start standing into that, it lifts you to a point where you're able to release so much of the crap that we carry on our shoulders that's not ours to carry. We get so personally attached to people, places, and things.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, we're all spiritual beings living a human experience, and there's no hierarchy on the other side. We're all direct to our higher power, whatever we want to call it. It doesn't care. It's unconditional. It's agape love. It doesn't care what we call it. It could be Buddha. It could be Jesus. It could be Allah. It could be anything. It could be Billy Bob Joe. It could be anything you want to call it. It doesn't matter. It's about honoring that direct relationship.
Mm.
because it knows our purest of intent. So, and then step two is moving into the self forgiveness to really clear your heart of what you hold against yourself.
Mm.
It's not as much, it's writing letters to others in a very strategic way and acknowledging what they've done, but really truly forgiving ourselves for whatever role we played in.
Yeah.
And the emotional freedom that it creates lightens us to a level that we immediately vibrate at much higher levels. And that's an active practice that I still do today. That's what my 6-year-old tells me to do. You know, Dad, if you're off, go write a self forgiveness letter. And I've written hundreds of them just because it's not about anyone else. It's about me.
Mm.
I can't be my most authentic version of myself if I'm carrying around crap. So I've got to release the crap. And the
Mhm.
only way I can do that is by forgiving myself. And then from there, we move into situational journaling, which is really understanding the roles that we play and others play in our lives.
Mm.
Because now that we've connected directly to the higher power and then released a lot of stuff off our heart and our emotional scale, we're able to move to a place a little bit more objectively to understand really the role that we're playing, the roles that others play, how to remove ourselves from the trauma triangle and drama triangle, and what I call the integrator space, not the integrator role, which
Mm.
is when you're in a healthy space away from the triangle and identifying it and not going back into it.
Yeah.
And then also looking at subjective and objective truth so that you can start understanding everyone is right. There is no wrong. Everyone is right for them. All 8.1 billion perspectives are accurate. Like, that is their truth. We can't fight people over their perspective. It's people are colorblind, people see color. I mean, they can say, this is a different shade of gray, and we can say, well, no, that's light blue. And at the end of the day, to us it is, to them it is that. And there is no right. Right is our perspective.
Mm.
And when we start releasing attachment to having to be right and having to be in the trauma triangle, drama triangle, and having to be worrying who's telling the truth, everyone's telling the truth. It's just from their perspective. So it's releasing all these things that we've carried for so long. And I call it multi-layered alignment and moving into that space. And it's
Yes.
not much different than your cope, right?
Hmm.
The only thing I would do with your cope is instead of patience, I would change it to pause. Because that's
Repeat that.
something that we to pause.
Oh, pause. Yeah, definitely.
Because
Yeah.
that's something we don't do, right? It's the same concept.
Hmm.
But my mind, again, right? We all have different perspectives, same exact thing. But for me, it's remembering to pause so I can
Yeah.
respond instead of reacting,
Mm.
because my whole life was reactive based on my trauma cycles.
Mm.
So when I started getting out of those, it's like anytime I went to go react or respond to a text or respond to a post, or it was like, Mike, just slow, just pause, just sit back, pause, give it 3 seconds, let it all flush out, and then you can respond, right? Because that 90-second emotional window where we're getting these floods of emotions through us, they're not real. Feelings are real, and that's what we create the stories that we live by around. But emotions are just that instant reaction. So if we allow the emotions to flow and then we sit through them, we can really start looking at things from a level of what do we feel about something instead of how do we react to something.
Mm.
But this
So much great
process,
wisdom shared there and real
hun-
experience. And, a lot
yeah,
of, I appreciate everything that you shared and the honesty and the authenticity too. We hear in the rooms that we're only as sick as our secrets. So it's great
hmm
that you opened your children up to seeing what's real and how to move through that, and helping them to identify what's inside of them as well and move it through it with you. And they'll be able to identify what even works, right? Because they've seen it in you, which is amazing. One of the biggest questions I've asked in the past, Michael, is how do these 8 billion people get along? How can we create global harmony? I think you've already alluded to some of the answers there, but what comes through when I ask, how can 8 billion people get along?
it's so much simpler than we make it.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, which is all I can speak of, the way that I interact with the world shifted so drastically when I went from living in conditional love to moving into unconditional love.
Hmm.
And it started with me unconditionally loving myself,
Hmm.
right? Because we always set this, if I lose weight, I'm going to love myself this much more. If I get this job, I'm going to love myself this much more. If I get this. If I reach this level, then I'm going to be worthy of this.
Mhm.
The reality is, we are intrinsically worth anything and everything. We don't need to physically accomplish anything. We just need to unconditionally love ourselves and others.
Mm.
It's the hardest thing to release when you come from that trauma background. It's taken me a lot of time and energy and effort and understanding. When we take the time to understand, there's a lot less chance of misunderstandings. When we take the time to communicate, there's a lot less chance of miscommunications. But it all starts with ourselves. If we don't invest time and energy into ourselves to understand ourselves, then we're never going to understand anyone else. If we don't start loving ourselves unconditionally and putting our own unconditional self love first, then we're always going to constantly be people pleasing and putting others first. And that's not unconditional love. That's conditional again, because that's the condition, is to try and fill our cup and fill the voids. And I really believe when if each individual focuses on themselves, goes into a world of reflective understanding, moves into a place of unconditional self-love, then there would be no more violence or wars or hatred or any of the disgusting things that are happening in the world today. Because when you move into that space, you don't need it. It just doesn't matter anymore. Like, you don't need to chase things. You don't need to force things. You don't need power and control. You don't need manipulation. You don't need those things. Those are all reactive behaviors. Like, when I sit back and I meditate and I look at the collective, it's just this reactive, enmeshed, twisted situation. And it's generational, societal, cultural traumas that just keep repeating themselves.
Mhm.
I mean, Iran and Palestine, or Hamas, right? Because it's really Hamas. If you really look at it, it's 3,000-year-old generational and cultural traumas that aren't even based on facts.
Mhm.
It's real today because the people have made it real.
Mhm.
The impacts are real. The pain is real. The reactive behaviors are very real. But if they really go beneath that surface and look what it stems from, there's not as many differences as there are similarities. But how do we put everybody on pause long enough to, or be patient, right? Same concept, same idea. I just need pause for the way that my brain works.
Mhm.
But how do we just like hit the pause button and say, guys, sit back and, humans, like, sit back and really look at this.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's patience, it's understanding, it's self love, self care,
Easy.
compassion, and self awareness.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's easy. We just had to flick a button. It works. We're good.
We're good.
We're
Just
good.
hit
We're
play.
good. We got this. Maybe we should go
And
trap
pause.
everybody in. Go trap everybody in that healing oasis for 19 months. That little bit of nowhere in the middle of Arkansas.
It's taking refuge, yeah, creating some space and allowing that self to heal. But you also reached out. You mentioned you had like over 30 coaches, 7 shamans. There were people that supported you on your journey. And I know that, Michael, you support people on their journey now, not just through podcasts, but you meet with them too. And
Hmm.
you broadcast some other messages in other places. So share a little bit about where else people can find you and how they can reach you and connect with you.
I mean, I have my website, which is www.inner-luminance.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm the only Michael Padurano in the world because my grandfather, when he came to Ellis Island, they added an R in his last name. So there's no other Michael Padurano the way that it's spelled on LinkedIn. I'm the only one. LinkedIn is probably the best place because I do 3 live audio rooms a week, sometimes 4, and we have really deep conversations and have a really great container for people to really flush things out and really go into a sacred space with themselves.
Mhm.
I'm on Instagram, same Michael Padurano, it doesn't change. It's still my name. We're good. And I'm everywhere and nowhere. Like, you could always find me. My cell phone number is public. My email is public. My calendar is public for the world to see.
Mhm.
Like, I even put my cell phone number in my Instagram profile so that it's right there. If you go to my profile, it's right there. That is my direct cell phone number. You
Mhm.
need something, text me. I have
Yeah.
3 kids, so don't call because I probably won't answer, but you can feel free to text from wherever you are. That's my WhatsApp, my cell phone, whatever you want to do. Like, I'm here. I
Mhm.
do one-on-one coaching. I do group workshops. I do group coaching, corporate coaching. I Whatever it takes to support people. My book's going to be, the paperback's amazing because it's going to be the whole process. And you're going to have the templates, the blank templates to actually do the work for yourself if you want. Like, it's all there.
Mhm.
I also have affiliate coaches that I'm taking through the program to that they can teach this program also.
Fantastic.
So it's just making that impact one person at a time, right? Like that's all it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're going to have all those links to make it super easy too. They'll just be in the video description down below. Michael, do you
Hmm.
have anything else that you want to share with everyone today?
Love yourself half as much as I love you, and you'll be fine.
Hmm. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Michael. It's been such a pleasure. I really enjoyed having you on the show. I really appreciate each and every one of you that have been tuning into the show, and we'll see you again next week on Awaken and Descend. Thanks again, Michael.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm so honored.
My pleasure.